everybody, and welcome to Season 8 of Crypto Sapiens. I'm your host, Rachel, for today, and I am joined by an incredible guest, Jonathon Hillis from Cabin, and I'm super excited to meet with him today. I have heard so many good things about Cabin. I've run into the team at MCon 2, and I've been super impressed with the energy, good vibes, and just a really positive team that shows up and is really passionate about building community. So yeah, I will go ahead and pass the mic off to John. I'd love to hear who you are, what got you started in Web3, and I always like to start off with what is your why? What gets you up out of bed in the morning?
Wow, thank you so much for that very kind introduction, Rachel. Yeah, happy to dive into some of that. So my name is Jonathon Hillis, and there's lots of pieces of my life that have been threading together in the last few years into Cabin. But what got me particularly on the crypto journey was first in college. My college roommate introduced me to Bitcoin. He showed me Silk Road, and that was, sort of my first view into crypto. And from there, I was sort of a casual observer and participant. Bought a little bit of Bitcoin and then Ethereum when it came out, but it was more of an interest that I was keeping an eye on than something that was like my primary focus. But at the same time, while I was in college, I discovered the joy of living within a dense residential community at a small liberal arts school. And I also studied collective action problems and complex adaptive systems. I was a political science and environmental studies major, and for my thesis, I did this experiment to try to find small group strategies for coordinating to overcome collective action problems, which I didn't realize at the time, but was essentially research on what we now might call DAOs. And after that, graduated, and that friend, that roommate, and I ended up co-founding a startup that was essentially like an early equivalent of a token-gated community in 2014, before there were really token-gated communities. But it was this idea to have this like small subscription community on a sort of bonding curve. And absolutely nobody wanted that in 2014. Everybody was still on Facebook at the time. So we pretty quickly, after about a year, we shut that down, and I decided I needed to get some real startup experience. I spent 6 years at Instacart, ultimately as the director of product for Shoppers and Marketplace. And then I got a little bit burned out on Web 2 and decided to take some time off. Originally, my plan was to go build a cabin in the woods and write some science fiction about this idea I was thinking about, and that at the time I was calling decentralized cities. And started doing that, ended up getting together a group of people. We called ourselves the Creator Co-op, and that's the group that came out once I'd finished building the cabin and helped start what is now Cabin, the DAO.
Wow, so it sounds like through your journey, really getting started, there are a lot of parallels. I also feel like I got burnt out, working in the world of Web 2. But it really sounds like you were kind of emulating the organizational structure of a DAO before it was even a thing. So that's really cool. Like you were doing it before it was a thing. That's awesome, man.
One of my advisors in college is a guy named Toon Myint, who had studied under Eleanor Ostrom at Indiana University. And I think she did some of the kind of foundational work within the field of political science on some of these questions around how small groups can overcome collective action problems. And I was just, kind of disappointed by a lot of the mainstream political philosophy that was, being studied in universities, because it all was sort of designed to apply at the scale of nation states. And it seemed pretty clear that like the more interesting problems to try to solve were collective action problems starting at small scales and with more experimental methods. So it's all kind of a happy coincidence that these pieces wove together. But I think that in terms of my whys, what I'm excited about and passionate about, they tie back to some of those things I was talking about. One of them is bringing together groups of people, in living communities with similar values. Another one is trying to design systems that allow people to coordinate more effectively. A third one is the ways that by doing those two things, we can start to create better environments for people and improve the natural environment at the same time.
Man, you're speaking my language. I love the regen vibes, man. I am really a huge supporter of doing things that are good for the individual and good for the planet, right? Because it's symbiotic. Those two things are connected. So yeah, I have seen you really involved in different communities and events, and definitely leaning towards regen vibes and the whole regen movement. So this wasn't a question I had prepared today, but in what ways does Cabin help with, sustainability and doing good things for the planet and for people?
Yeah, so we've been working on developing what we call our guiding principles and obvious truths. And we shared some of these in our vision document. We've shared some in other formats before, but these are really emergent principles of our community. And we've been working on updating a draft of them. So I can share those here and now. So there are three guiding principles that we think about at Cabin. One is live in community. The second is integrate with nature. And the third is create together. And then each of those guiding principles has a couple obvious truths associated with it. Things that, we believe are obvious and lead us to want to live in accordance with them, and are generally accepted as obvious, but aren't necessarily things that most people are putting into practice in their lives. So you asked specifically about nature. And so I'll talk a little bit about the obvious truths behind our guiding principle, integrate with nature. There are two of them. One is touching grass is good for our well-being. And the other one is regenerative local communities are the best store of value. And so the way we put those things into practice at Cabin is that we are building a global network of beautiful properties in nature for remote workers seeking meaningful connections, places where people can co-live with friends in nature. And by doing that, we accomplish a couple things. First of all, we give ourselves the ability to unplug from the internet, from our phones, from our remote work, and step outside. And we believe that, spending time in nature, touching grass is crucial for mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. And there's great scientific evidence to support that, but I think most people know inherently that that's true.
Yeah. I mean, doesn't the soil have like antidepressant properties too?
Yeah, I mean, just looking at nature is enough for me. But yeah, there's many layers to it, I think, in terms of how it benefits people. I think the second principle here is that regenerative local communities are the best store of value. And what we mean by that is that regenerative systems are systems that sustainably grow capacity and resilience. And so natural ecosystems do this automatically. They have feedback loops to improve soil, water, nutrient recycling, biodiversity, et cetera. Humans can practice these things as well. And what we're trying to do at Cabin is create lived environments where we as a community can practice building these regenerative systems. So our neighborhoods aim to build housing, grow food, produce energy, regenerate natural resources, develop relationships, make meaning together. And by growing these types of systems from the ground up, we believe we can create better homes for people using less resources in less time. And we can do this with this emerging tech stack of regenerative practices, off-grid renewable energy, satellite internet, rural land costs regulation, that basically open up this new way of living that allows remote workers to live more in accordance with the natural world.
Wow, man. Just hats off to you. Like, I just love it. The mission sounds just so aligned with the regen movement, like building something that has resource capacity to grow over time. I really love that. One thing you mentioned about touching grass, I'm not sure if you've encountered like the Tree Gen project.
No.
I recently had, oh my God, man. So I had the pleasure of meeting, and by the way, shout out to Jimmy if Jimmy ever listens to this, but I had the pleasure of meeting Jimmy from Tree Gens, and he has this whole thing on Twitter. If you look at #TouchTree, he will like host these Twitter spaces and just have people go out and touch a tree, take a picture with it and put it on Twitter. So if you haven't seen that, yeah, maybe there's some alignment for collaboration. And Jimmy just won the Guinness World Record for planting the most trees in 24 hours as a single person. So that's awesome. I definitely a connection I'd love to make there.
Yeah, cool. There's a funny, cool related thing that I've seen pop up in a couple places recently, which is people building these little like sensors that let you can like hold them up to plants and trees and stuff and like listen, and you can basically like listen to.
That's awesome. Well, we can get into so many rabbit holes there. Yeah. But yeah, it sounds like I really, really appreciate the principles and how well thought out this is. I am also a founder. I started my own company, and I studied holistic wellness, and I studied like what is in our food supply, right? Pesticides, herbicides, the effect this has on people, and holistic wellness. So in studying this, I started to work with clients. I had an organic juice business, and I would work with them and say, okay, how do you want to improve your life mentally, physically, and emotionally, right? And I felt like this was broken if it was just focused on the individual and not giving back to our planet. So what I tried to do in designing this business model was help the individual get healthy, give back to nonprofits, every quarter cycle to a different nonprofit, helping with like a different element. It was in the style of elements and alchemy. So help give back in a different way. So I feel like Cabin is really aligned with those ethos and just really like at my core, my values, because I feel like if we want to make it, as human race, we have to start doing good things for our planet and being more mindful of sustainability for sure. So I love that Cabin DAO is doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And I think that it's been really cool to see various parts of the regen movement and the solar punk movement starting to blossom with a more optimistic vision of the future based around some of these ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd love to hear your take on like what projects you really like, what events. I know you guys were really, you're really active at MCon too. I saw you had like a kind of like a booth / table thing with a bunch of cool stickers. In fact, I actually have the Cabin DAO sticker on the back of my laptop because nice. I just love the vibes.
That was a really fun event. We did a project we called The Room, where we took over one of the rooms at MCon 2 and ran coherence and connection sessions to try to do some weaving of people within intentional containers, which is something we practice a lot, in our co-living environments and at cabin weeks. And so we wanted to bring a little taste of that to MCon. But yeah, it was definitely a really fun event with just great people and energy.
That is so cool. And it is now on my bucket list to go to one of these locations and just connect with cabin folks. Like, it just sounds like such an amazing experience.
That's great. We'd love to have you out.
So I haven't asked this yet, but I'm curious about the community organization piece. So you've mentioned Cabin is a DAO, right? So why was this choice made to structure it as a DAO, and how has this benefited the community?
Yeah, so let's return maybe to the story I was sharing, a bit about my personal story, and now I'll pick it back up with the formation of the DAO and why we started it in the first place. So as I mentioned, I was working with a group called the Creator Co-op. We were a bunch of independent online creators who met online during the pandemic in 2020, and then as the world was starting to reopen in 2021, I invited that group to come out to this cabin I just finished building in the Texas Hill Country. And late one night, sitting around a campfire just outside of the window here that I'm sitting in front of, we dreamed up this residency program for creators and remote workers, independent online people that was going to be governed by our community. And this was right at the kind of start of the ramp up of DAOs in 2021 in that bull market. Of course, there had been prior examples of the DAO and other DAOs popping up before that, but there's a big wave that kicked off in the 2021 bull market, and we were a part of that cohort. And that all the tools were just starting to come together to do multi-sigs and snapshots and these sort of things effectively. And so that week we launched a donation-based crowdfund where people on the internet could sponsor creator residencies at the cabins. And this incredible group of 101 people chipped in donations, and the deal was they got to donate to these residency programs, and in exchange they got a token so they could vote on which creators got to come out for residencies. And so that was it. It was a very simple governance mechanism. And, at the time, we actually weren't even thinking of it necessarily as a DAO. We were just thinking of it as like this, creator residency program that we wanted to let the community vote on based on who had supported it. And so we started running these residencies, and, only months into it, did we start to realize, as more people showed up in the Discord and wanted to engage, that, this wasn't just going to be a residency program, this was actually a DAO. And at that point, we, sort of formalized the operations.
Well, so it sounds like you actually put it into action, and it's something that just stuck because it ended up working for your community.
That's right. Right. Yeah,
That's really cool.
It wasn't like a like some abstract, like, let's go launch a DAO thing. It was like, we want to do this residency program for creators. How can we use these new tools to support that? And, to build a community of people that are interested in engaging and voting on, residencies. And that's what stuck, like you said, and that's what really got us off to the races as a community and as a DAO.
Well, I really like your thought process and how that was rolled out, because I feel like a lot of projects try to force being a DAO, and I don't think everything needs to be a DAO. But if that works for your community and you see success with that model, go for it.
Yeah, I think it's also just like the word DAO has become pretty meaningless. I don't like, we don't use it, as much to talk about Cabin, just because it doesn't, it means so many different things to different people, and people get into such like, definitional debates that I just don't think it's a useful term anymore.
So I like that you said the term cooperative, and we also use that at Opolis as well. So I like that. It's like a co-op.
Yeah, I think, and I think there are lots of different models here, right? Like co-ops are an interesting model. Cabin is actually structured as an unincorporated nonprofit association. I think there are models that work well in the context of protocols, models that work well in the context of social organizations. And I just think trying to lump all of these things into a single category is kind of crazy, because they often have very different purposes and intents and structures.
Absolutely. Something I heard recently, I don't know if you know OX Justice from the Polygon core team. He's doing DAO operations over there. He said he went to some Congress event and was trying to talk about DAOs without talking about DAOs. So he went, I think he was going to DC and was like, okay, I want to talk about this thing without using the term DAO, which has all this connotation that comes with it. So I've been trying to challenge myself, like, to talk about DAOs without saying DAOs, like a decentralized cooperative, a group working towards a collective goal, right? Making decisions autonomously.
Yeah, makes sense. I think, another part of my interest in all of this goes back to having spent a lot of my middle school and high school years on various online communities, early iterations of things like Dig and Reddit, and the term I actually like right now is just internet native organization, because
I like that.
I think it speaks to the fact that basically what we're not like reinventing organizations. We're taking an organizational model and adding a new set of on-chain tools. And I think it's much more akin to like being able to coordinate an online forum with transparent on-chain financial and reputational systems than it is some totally different type of organizational structure. It's like an evolution of these things that we've had in the past with a really helpful new set of tools.
Absolutely. I really like that. Yeah. Wow. That's really awesome, man. Okay, so the next question I have for you, I wanted to ask, what have been some of the milestones or accomplishments that you've seen as a project? And like, what are you the most proud of that Cabin has accomplished so far?
Yeah, so we've been around for a little over 2 years now. And, if we just track that 2 years, a lot has happened and changed. But the kind of big milestones, I think, the first one was the initial residency program crowdfund, where the 101 people contributed donations. That was a huge milestone for us and resulted in some really amazing residencies and the formation of the organization. The kind of next big milestone after that, I think, came basically in the first half of 2021, where we started running all kinds of retreats and residency programs for DAO operators, DAO groups that wanted to come out, and then ultimately culminated in our first DAO camp, which was basically summer camp experience where we brought together a bunch of DAO leaders and had an incredible time, which resulted in a lot of like new ecosystem projects launching out of it. One that is particularly cool, I think, is that's where HATS protocol, which I think is like at the forefront of how we should be thinking about the next iteration of DAO infrastructure. That idea sort of got fully baked and was bounced around a lot at that first DAO camp. The funny part about that, of course, is that May of 21, when we did that, was also when Celsius and the like markets started imploding, and so we were off having this like amazing time at DAO summer camp, and then we got back that weekend and realized that like the markets had imploded. And so we had to completely, pivot. There were no more people really that interested in bringing their DAOs out for residency programs at the cabins, because the whole ecosystem was just like cratering. So our next big milestone after that was probably around late 21, which was that MCon 2 experience where we talked about a little bit earlier. After that, I think the next big milestone was just about 2 months ago when we officially launched the network city. So Cabin has been building this network city for the past 2 years, and right around our 2-year anniversary, we finally launched with our first 22 global properties that are a part of the network, and opened up the network to Cabin citizens. And that will be, our primary focus now, is helping get people out to Cabin neighborhoods to experience co-living, to attend Cabin weeks, and to become citizens. Yeah, so that's the long-term vision for Cabin, is to build a network city. And a network city is essentially a decentralized network of properties, which are in different places around the world, but have a shared culture, economy, and governance structure. And so our current network city contains 22 properties around the world, and our citizens can access those properties. And over the coming years, we hope to grow to many more places and many more citizens as we build out this network city.
Wow, that's amazing. So it's kind of like this dispersed network city with these 22 properties. And are they international, or are they only in the US?
Yeah, international. They are all over the world.
Wow. Do you have a favorite property? Is it the first one?
Yeah, it is. So that's where I am right now. That's my
Awesome.
primary residence is here at Neighborhood Zero, which is the place out in the Texas Hill Country where it all got started. And over the past 2 years, we've been building this neighborhood from the ground up as a community. We now have a full co-living community with multiple cabins, hangout spaces, bathhouse, sauna, campfire area. So just last week, the current residents completed a new dance platform out in the woods for us to have dance
Nice.
parties on. And everything, that we've been building over the last 2 years has been designed and built by members of the community who have come out here to stay at Neighborhood Zero.
Wow, that's very cool. And when did this first start? When did you found Cabin?
So that happened in May of 2021. So that was when I was describing the creator co-op coming together out here with the campfire. That was all in May of 2021.
So you have come that far in just 2 years. You've accumulated 22 properties and are creating this network city. In 2 years, you've accomplished that. That's insane, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And just to clarify, we're the network of neighborhoods is structured, the DAO is structured as independent, operating properties. And so each of those properties is still, independently, autonomously operated as part of the network. So those are not owned or managed by the DAO.
Got it. So do you have individuals that are like long-term residents, or is it mostly people cycling in and out?
Yeah, so our primary residents are basically remote workers, digital nomads who are looking for flexible living arrangements in community. And so what that typically means is that people will come to stay at a neighborhood for anywhere from a month to many months or hopefully years. And what we intend to do over time is to build out a combination of increasingly permanent housing centered around families as well as more flexible options for people who want to bounce around the network and stay in different places.
Wow. Well, it sounds like what you've created really has just immense product market fit. Like I know a lot of people in Web3 that just travel from either hackathon to hackathon or conference to conference and really need that flexibility with living arrangements. I felt like that myself at times, like I'm going every month to a different conference, going to a different event. And that's such an amazing thing you've built. And people need that in the industry, and that's really cool that they can come together, work independently, travel and do what they love, and have a cabin that they can call home.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is, I think, really important. We're not just trying to build places where you rent out a house for a short-term stay and you come and you go. We're trying to build out places that people can call home, places where people can leave their mark, where they can be a part of a community, where they can travel around, and any neighborhood they show up at is going to feel like home.
Wow. Well, I definitely, I'm optimistic of the future of Cabin now. And I feel like just the vibe of the team, I could feel the passion. And I can't wait to go to a cabin someday. It's definitely on my bucket list. So for the future, let's talk about what's on the roadmap for Cabin. Are there any upcoming events or upcoming initiatives that you're excited about that you'd like to share with our audience today?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing to be aware of is that we are launching a new program called Cabin Weeks. And this is an evolution of our build weeks and grow weeks that we've been running before. And a Cabin Week is an opportunity to experience a warm welcome to Cabin and come have an enriching 1 to 2 week stay at a Cabin neighborhood, connect with like-minded individuals, get a taste of co-living, break bread with friends, and learn a little bit more about what it's like to be a Cabin citizen, and then at the end of the week, become a Cabin citizen. And so if you're interested in getting involved, the best way to do that is to go to cabin.city and click on the join a Cabin Week button and apply, and come out and get a taste of what living with Cabin is like. And we're running 4 of those experiences this fall. They are going to be at here at Neighborhood Zero, at Mana in Puerto Rico, Elkin Mist in Washington, and Traditional Dream Factory in Portugal. So we've got some options all over the place. And if you want to get involved, that's a great way to do it. If you're not quite ready to take the leap into an IRL experience with us, then you can hop into our Discord or hop on a one-on-one call with a member of the team and make your profile on our census and get involved with the community.
This is so amazing. Just really, really beautiful initiative. I am so excited to do this someday. But in the meantime, I myself would like to join the Discord and get connected with the team and just hang with you guys more online, at least, if I can't make it.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of our, short-term, immediate roadmap. We believe in long-term thinking at Cabin, and so we also have a 5, 50, and 500-year roadmap. And wow. So you can check those out on our vision document. But the short version of it is that over the next 5 years, we are planning to collectively curate and grow to our first 5,040 citizens, which is the number that Aristotle thought made for an ideal self-governing polis. And then from there, over the next 50 years, we are planning to co-create a network city with over 1 million people concurrently living together in permanent intergenerational communities. And 500 years is a long time, and we certainly don't know exactly what the world is going to look like, but we are serious about the idea of building a city, and building a city requires thinking on those types of time horizons. And so we have done a lot of historical research to try to understand how cities have grown in the past and how they might grow in the future. And we take a lot of inspiration from an incredible diversity of governance structures and social contracts that have existed across history. That includes past cities and past societies like Catalhoyuk, Nebelivka, Uruk, Teotihuacan, the Haudenosaunee, and many other types of organizations that we think can give us a sense of how we can return to a new old way of living.
New old way of living. I love that.
Yeah.
Solar punk future.
That's right. Yeah. How can we live in ways that people have actually been living for a very long time, but using the new tools and technologies that we now have available to do it even better?
Man, I love that. You're speaking my language. I love the mission. I love the philosophy. I love that you guys have done so much research and put so much thought and time into this. And you are really planning into the future. You got a 5, 10-year, 100-year, 500-year roadmap. And it sounds like your team is putting in the work necessary to build something that's sustainable and growing over time. And hey, and if in 2 years you can get to 22 properties, I am really optimistic of the future of Cabin. I really think you guys will just continue to grow and do good things. So going back to what's on the roadmap for Cabin now, I know you did the event activation at MCon too. Are there any upcoming event activations or conferences you're going to or anything like that?
Yeah, so we'll actually be at FWB Fest, which is coming up very soon. We're going to be doing some similar types of coherence and connection activities that we did at MCon 2. So if you're going to be at FWB Fest, come hang out with us there. And if you're not going to be there, then definitely go check out these upcoming Cabin weeks.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm not familiar with FWB Fest, but I am going to ETH Toronto in a couple weeks. And then I'm getting asked to go to Permissionless by a bunch of my friends. So I'm thinking about going to Permissionless, and that is in Texas. So
it is, yeah, in Austin, very close to us. Just we're about 45 minutes west of Austin. So yeah, if you're at Permissionless, definitely reach out, and we'd love to get you out to Neighborhood Zero.
Oh, I could see Okay, that's another reason now I want to go. I was on the fence about it, but if I get to go to Neighborhood Zero, yeah, I might want to do this.
Nice.
Awesome. Okay. So it looks like we made it through all of our questions. The last thing I'll leave our listeners off with today is how can they get involved with Cabin? I mean, I know we covered a lot of this, but what's like is there a direct call to action or something that they can do to get involved with you or connect with the team?
Yeah, definitely. So if you go to cabin.city, you can apply to join a Cabin week. You can connect one-on-one with a team member by booking a call. You can hop into our Discord and say hi. You can create a profile in our census. But ultimately, while Cabin exists online, we really get together IRL, and that's where the magic happens. So if you're ready to take the leap and learn more, would definitely recommend joining a Cabin week or coming out for one of our long-term co-living experiences. You can also find out more information about us on Twitter at cabin.city.
Awesome. And for those listening, don't worry, I will provide these links in the description. John, you have just been such a gracious guest today. Thank you for answering all these questions and for just building something so positive that's good for people, good for the planet, and really prioritizes community growth. So thank you so much for joining today. And yeah, for those listening, thanks for tuning into Crypto Sapiens.
Thanks so much, Rachel.
Okay, friends. So before we end today's episode, I just want to take a moment to thank projects like Bankless DAO and projects like Opolis for making season 8 of Crypto Sapiens possible. So I just want to draw your attention to the links in our description. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see the links there. Or if you're listening to our podcast, you'll also see the links in the description. The first is going to be Bankless DAO community. And for those watching the video, I'll go ahead and share my screen. So you'll see here Bankless DAO's website. You'll also be able to learn more about how to join Bankless DAO, the different guilds, and different projects that we're working on at Bankless DAO. And there really is something for everyone here. I think it's an amazing starting point for those looking to get involved in Web3. If you're listening to this and want to learn more about how to get involved, Bankless DAO is an excellent starting point. There's guilds for just about any interest here, so I highly recommend going to Bankless.community, joining the Discord, and saying hi and making some friends. To stay up to date on all things Crypto Sapiens, go to cryptosapiens.xyz. Here, you'll see all of our podcast episodes uploaded with a brief description of what they are, and you can also download them from here. Now, last but not least, a lot of you know me actually from my work at Opolis. So Opolis, if you don't know, is a digital employment cooperative. We do things like offer employer services to those working in the Web3 space, working on DAOs, or running their own independent business. So we help issue W-2s, pay stubs, and get you things like national healthcare coverage. So if this is something you're interested in, click the link in the description. All proceeds for referrals go towards supporting Crypto Sapiens. Thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode of Crypto Sapiens. As always, stay tuned for next time, and thank you again for joining.